Hello, welcome back, etc. This time we're going to talk about some of the other things that exist in the Nix community. So where we've so far talked pretty much about how to use Nix on your own machine, interacting with just the tools that Nix provides itself. Today we're going to talk about some of the other projects that exist. So first off, we're going to go check out nixos.org. And here we'll see there's a few different sites, basically. They have Nix, which is the package manager and tooling that we've been interacting with so far. Things like nixenv, nixstore. These command line tools are part of Nix, and the Nix language itself that we've been writing a little bit of is part of Nix. There's also Nix packages, which is the global packages repository that we've been basically installing software from. So when we would install nixpackages.ripgrep, it comes from Nix packages. The other major part of the Nix kind of like triarchy of, that's not a word. There's three major parts of the Nix ecosystem. There's Nix, Nix packages, and NixOS. NixOS is a full Linux distribution based around Nix and Nix packages. The entire configuration for the operating system is represented in the Nix language, and the whole install is built into the Nix store in this immutable way like Nix does, using the Nix language. So I can show you a little bit what that looks like. I have this box in DigitalOcean, and now we're on Linux. You can see Nix means we're on NixOS. And basically, everything lives in etc nixos/configuration.nix. This is the file that defines the whole operating system install. So there's a whole bunch of stuff going on here, but the readable part starts here. You can see we're setting it to auto upgrade. So that'll be the equivalent of, installing system upgrades every night kind of thing. Listing some packages that we want installed, specifying that I want my shell to be Z shell from Nix packages, some other stuff, some networking configuration. This is about running store garbage collection every night at 3:15 in the morning. Configuring some services. I want to run OpenSSH because I want to be able to connect from, say, my MacBook Pro. Configuring Nginx to do some things. And just various things. So when I want to build this configuration, I can run sudo nixos rebuild switch. And what this does is it rebuilds your entire system and activates the new one. So if I run this, it might fail. I don't know. I haven't actually logged onto this machine in a while, and I don't even know how long it will take. Let's see. So this is doing a whole bunch of stuff. It's building some static websites that I host too, because I integrated the build process there into NixOS. There. So now we've switched over to the new machine configuration, and that was it. So that is more meaningful than it actually sounds. I can do, if I decided I had broken my system and I didn't like what I had now done, I could do sudo nixos rebuild switch rollback. And that would just roll the entire machine state back to the previous generation. And I'll just do that. So we just rolled back. But it looks like the previous one was broken or something. Doesn't really matter. Okay. But what we saw there was we just rolled back from generation 139 to 138. So that means it's keeping a full history of every state this machine has been in. I can list those using a different tool, nixenv list generations. So we use this to list the things in our home Nix profile. And you can see I have a few here. I have 67. But you can actually target the system by saying profile nixvar nix profiles system. So the system profile that's built using NixOS rebuild is literally just the same thing as the one at your home/.nixenv, or your home/.nix profile. So this is a Nix profile, the thing that you manage using nixenv. Say if I would do ia nix packet nix on NixOS, it's nixos.ripgrep. That would create a new generation of my top level or my user profile. So I had 67 generations before, I should have 68 now. Yeah, and I do. Similarly, that system profile that's built using NixOS rebuild activates this system profile at nixvar next profile system. And I guess I have to use sudo to do that. And we can see I have 139. If I decided I didn't like that generation 138, I can roll back to the previous one, or the later one, by saying sudo nixenv switch. Huh. Can't remember. I think it's switch. Switch generation. Sudo nixenv switch generation 139 profile nixvar next system. No, nixvar next profiles system. And so that switches us to generation 139. And that includes everything, right? Like that includes the kernel. If I would reboot the machine now, I'd be booting into whatever kernel was specified by that generation. So that's a quick tour of NixOS that doesn't really do it justice, but that's the kind of like NixOS in a nutshell. Now, NixOS is the only other top-level project maintained by Nix, but there are actually other similar projects. So one that I use on my machine is called NixDarwin. So what this does is it tries to kind of emulate what NixOS brings to Linux on macOS, to whatever extent that's possible. macOS doesn't give you quite as much control, but you can do some things with it. So in a later video, I'll walk through how to actually install this, but I can briefly show you what my configuration looks like here. I have a file, don't worry about where this is too much, but I have a file called darwin.nix that sets up my user and tells macOS what shell I want to use, installs some packages that are globally available, some stuff about just macOS defaults, some stuff about whether I want the dock to be, on the bottom or on the right side or whatever, some stuff about trackpad sensitivity, a few different things like that, and then other Nix-specific stuff. So this kind of does part of what NixOS can do. I find it kind of interesting to play around with because I spend so much time with Nix, but it's not the most useful thing. What I find more useful and more interesting is Home Manager. So Home Manager is a thing that a lot of people use on NixOS and alongside NixDarwin, but it's just as useful or more useful without NixDarwin installed as well. This is something that I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about in the next few videos because I think some of you will find Home Manager pretty interesting. So the next video I'll do is how to install it, but just to show what you can do with Home Manager, I have a file called home.nix here. And what home.nix basically expresses is what do you want installed for your user. You can think of it kind of like dotfiles. So I migrated I had a dotfiles repository before where I had all of I use Vim as an editor, as you can see. I had all of my Vim config in a dotfiles repo. Now I've ported that into Home Manager, and that has some interesting effects, as well as installing a few different programs, GPG agent, a few different dotfiles, and then there's these kind of DSLs to configure SSH, Git, Zshell, and NeoVim. So I'm using NeoVim. So here's an interesting thing. I've got this specified using Nix, and you can see I'm listing plugins here using not a Vim package manager as you would normally think of, though I guess it uses pathogen under the hood. But in Nix syntax. And so what that enables me to do is if I look which nvim, I'll have to do read link. You can see there's a path in the Nix store. Now, because of the way we have our Nix infrastructure set up, as soon as I build anything with Nix, it gets uploaded into our shared binary cache. So if any of you would do nix space run this path -c nvim, you would get a Vim that looks precisely like mine, because it would bring all of the plugins, all of the configuration, all of this is bundled up into the same thing. So this kind of points the way towards a really interesting way to distribute your dot files, right? If you would walk over to someone else's computer and, you know, copy and paste yourself the command to run your own bundled up home manager provided Vim or whatever, that would be potentially an interesting way of working. So over the next few videos, I'm going to talk about how you might accomplish that, how you can install Home Manager, how you can configure it a bit, how you can set up your editor with your own configuration there. And then we'll maybe talk through what a reasonable pattern would be for making this kind of thing easy. Maybe we can build a tool together to automate that. So yeah, look for a new video tomorrow about how to install Home Manager and get started with it. But if you're curious, you can go Google Home Manager and skim the README, maybe work ahead. But yeah, see you tomorrow.